If you manage to hit Champion in Rocket League, you're probably somewhat good at the game. However, the climb to Grand Champion 1 can feel like an eternity away. It's a common point where some players consider whether or not to push on to go from good at the game to great at it. Hey, I'm Jack, your friendly neighborhood Rocket League player who continues to be addicted to this game. In today's video, I analysed 3 different Champ 1 players to identify common mistakes made at this rank. I'll split the video up into 3 parts: a general analysis of each player, common mistakes each of these players are making, and suggestions for players stuck at the Champion 1 rank. Let's get into it. Firstly, I'll go through how this section of the video will work. I've got a replay of each of the Champ 1 players I've identified on ballchasing.com, and we'll use this replay to analyse each of them. I'm going to do a 1-minute analysis of each of these players' replays, and then provide some takeaways that I found watching the entire replay itself. Let's watch our first Champ 1 player. Okay, let's get into player 1's replay. Very weird first off to see that his teammate didn't actually challenge the ball on the kickoff, leaving them to double commit. Good positioning in goal and good to get the 50-50 to back up his teammate. Bit of a weird option to push downfield to steal the mid boost, because as a result, teammate whiffed, lucky enough to get that 50-50, but would have preferred to be a little bit closer to the play. Good to get it over the opponent's head. Would have liked to see a little bit more control, however there was quite a lot of pressure on the ball. Good spacing between his teammate, waiting for the pass. A little bit hesitant to actually challenge the ball. There was quite enough space between himself and the opponent to actually set up for a shot, but didn't take that option. Quite a decent pass from the teammate there. However, positioning on the field was a little bit awkward for him to actually set up the shot. As a result, leads to a goal. Okay, it's taking kickoff now. Let's see what it looks like. A bit weird again to go for a fake kickoff. However, did get possession of the ball, but didn't do it well enough to take control of it to set up the next play. And as a result, left the teammate in quite an awkward position, leading to a goal. While we fully can't judge a player based on 1 minute's worth of gameplay, here are a few takeaways I took watching the entire replay. Firstly, the player was quite hesitant when trying to make a decision throughout the game. Oftentimes, they'd be waiting for the opponent to make the decision when, in Rocket League, you really need to be proactive rather than reactive to your opponents. As we also first saw in the first minute of the replay, going for boost grabs when they weren't really necessary. I'd see the player with 60 boost or more throughout the replay and wondered why they were going for the mid boosts all of a sudden. As a result, it left their teammate to fend for themselves during offense. Speaking of teammates, I found that this player would push quite closely to theirs and would leave them in very risky positions. This led to their opponents getting quite easy counterattacks on them. It also seems like this player doesn't really have the timing of when to go for an aerial down pat just yet. At times they'd fly up and completely whiff the ball, or just go for the ball for no particular reason. Lastly, seeing that this player was partied with their teammate, found they were using way too many fake kickoffs throughout the game. As you climb the higher ranks, going for multiple fake kickoffs in a game can be quite predictable to your opponents. Here are some examples I found in the replays that highlight these takeaways I've just mentioned. Okay, getting into the second player now. On for kickoff. Decent kickoff for them. They can see that their teammate's pushing for the mid boost, so good to go for the back corner boost. Bit of a weird touch by that teammate, but good to position and cover the defense. Bit of a weird rotation from the teammate and a bit of a weird double jump there by the player themselves. Pretty risky push, seeing that the teammate had enough room to challenge for the ball, and an unnecessary flip there. Again, quite close to the teammate, because if the opponent got a really good 50, which they just did, they are now retreating back onto defense. Decent 50-50. Again, seeing the double commit, I feel like that was all for their teammates to go for, however, interrupted their aerial path. Good half flip. Again, a bit of a risky position being quite close to the teammate. Again, the opponent can go for quite an easy counter attack. And we'll watch one last play for the minute. and a decent aerial. The key takeaways I took from watching player 2's full replay was their shot inaccuracy and at times was a bit impatient when taking the shots. They didn't realise how much timing they actually had with their opponents retreating back onto defense to really nail a good solid shot. However, just couldn't capitalise during the game. Also, I noticed that ball cam was off for quite a long time during plays. When you turn on ball cam, you almost become unaware of what is actually happening during the game and can be very risky. Similar to player 1, I found they were a bit too close to their teammate at times, and general game awareness was quite poor when their teammate was actually the best person to go for the shot. The player also took some quite risky defensive positions and really didn't set up well enough to take the 50-50s during this game. Lastly, I noticed that ball control wasn't the best. Throughout the game, they'd often give away possession straight to the opponents. Here are some examples of those takeaways in this replay. Third replay, let's go. Okay, this player's going for quite a big cheat. As a result, was beaten by the opponent, putting a lot of pressure back onto the teammate to make the save. Unfortunately, the teammate doesn't do so. Okay, they're on kickoff now. Let's see what happens. I find it a bit weird that they're not flipping twice for the kickoff. As you get to the higher ranks, fast kickoffs almost require every single player to flip at least once before hitting the ball. Good so far. Again, this is a bit of a game sense situation. The players should have been able to realise that they saw their teammate cutting rotation. Maybe just holding off before they challenged the ball to stay defensively would have potentially had saved that second goal there. Bit of a weird aerial there and quite a rush shot, seeing that both of the opponents were actually retreating onto defense. Another risky double commit, seeing that while the teammate again is very prone to cutting rotation, they still had possession and control of the ball, so it would have been better to hold off to see what the teammate was trying to muster there. While these kickoffs seem to be working at this rank, again, it's just going to be very problematic as you try to climb into the Grand Champion ranks where a majority are speed flipping. Gave away possession on the ball quite easily, however, was able to catch the opponent off guard for a really nice shot. And we'll go into the final play of the minute. Again, pushing up quite closely with these cheats, I'd recommend going to the second boost pad before making your decision on whether or not you wanted to challenge the ball. Some key takeaways I took from watching the third player's replay was their kickoff errors. They weren't actually flipping to get to the ball faster, and while it worked at this rank and in this particular game, it can be very difficult to have these work effectively in higher ranks. Secondly was their spacing with their teammate. Now I will admit, the teammate they had in this game was very prone to cutting rotations, so it can be quite difficult to work with players like this. However, this player should have realised that the teammate they'd been paired with was highly aggressive in that playstyle, so potentially playing more of a defensive game to work out how to best support that teammate in the game, because I saw literally 3 goals go through due to double commits in this game. Boost dependency was also another thing. I found this player rushing off to get boost just to be filled up all the way to 100 throughout the game, when they could have been there to actually support their teammate on attack. Lastly, this player was also prone to giving away possession quite easily. Now, it did work in the first minute of the game when they caught their opponent off guard. However, this led to many other goals being scored by the opponents. Here are some examples of those takeaways. After analysing these 3 Champ 1 replays, I did notice there were a few common mistakes that occurred between the 3 players. The most prevalent trend I noticed when analysing these 3 replays was the lack of game sense and awareness of teammates. When watching each of these 3 players, I noticed that they were quite close to their teammates during the game. This resulted in quite a few double commits and even just complete confusion as to who was going for the ball. Secondly, it was common during the replays to see each of these 3 players duck off away from the play to collect a 100 boost. Don't get me wrong though, this is a perfectly fine thing to do in a game. However, I saw multiple opportunities for each of these 3 players in the games to actually capitalize and potentially have scored. During these 3 games, I saw teammates wanting to give off a pass to them, the opposition being in very weird defensive positions, and just needing to capitalize on those basic open net shots. Lastly, among these 3 players, you could also see some level of ball control happening. However, there were many times where each of these players gave away possession rather easily. I must admit, I also fall into this habit as a Grand Champion 1 in giving away possession quite easily in a game. That's why I feel like it's important for Champ 1 players to really hone in and work on their ball control to capitalize on those opportunities when they do receive possession to make a play. A majority of these goals scored by the opponents in each of these 3 replays were a result of either a double commit or the player giving away possession. In the higher ranks, your opponents will capitalize on these mistakes that you're making and punish you for it, usually on the scoreboard. So now we get to that point in the video where I offer some suggestions for players who find themselves in Champion 1. Let me give you a handful of suggestions that may be useful to you. Learn the different paths you can take to pick up as many small boost pads on the field as possible. This will keep your boost levels high and keep you relevant in the play as it develops. Be mindful of your teammates and the decisions they make in the game. They'll either play more aggressive or defensive, so try to mold your playstyle to complement theirs. Be cautious of the space between you and your teammates. You want to ensure you cover as many potential attacking options your opponents may have. Be purposeful with your touches. Every so often, it's good to power clear the ball to relieve some pressure off of you and your teammate. It's also equally important to make sure you aren't touching the ball for the sake of touching the ball. Be patient once you have possession on the ball and take your time to set up the next play. You don't always need to instantly hit the ball. And most importantly, have fun with it. At the end of the day, Rocket League is just a game and you're actually better than a majority of players if you're at the champion level. Don't forget that. Keep on grinding and work on getting that 1% better each and every session. So there we have it, a quick overview of Champion 1 players and a little replay analysis of each of them, as well as some suggestions for any of you Champion 1 players looking to strive to get up to that next rank. I actually had quite a lot of fun making this video. Let me know down in the comments if you're a lower ranked player wanting to see a similar video like this. I'd be more than happy to do it. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you're new here. You'll receive a weekly dose of this wannabe YouTuber making an absolute fool of himself doing these Rocket League videos. Here's another video to check out while you're here. I'm Jack, and I'll see you next time. Catch ya!